Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Beautiful Friday, the last Friday of August. You got college football starting this weekend. I'm from Nebraska originally, so I'm a huge Nebraska fan. Very excited about the game against Northwestern in Dublin, Ireland. Hopefully, Nebraska beats Northwestern. Although I
what
realize
is the connection there? What is the connection between Nebraska and Northwestern and Dublin?
Probably there were a lot of Irish people that lived in Omaha, a lot of Italians too. So
why aren't they playing in Florence or Rome or something?
So I don't know. It's just they do. I'm not sure where the connection is.
Go to Milan, play a football game in Milan.
Yeah, I think they played in Dublin before. Well, they've had a game in Dublin. I don't know if as Nebraska
Notre
played
Dame
there,
played
or has
there.
It just been Notre Dame? Yeah, so that made sense, right? I mean,
because they are, the Fighting Irish. That's why. There's not a lot of corn in Ireland, is there?
No,
I'm aware of.
Well, I mean, Northwestern isn't necessarily Irish either, are they?
No, and the Irish are traditionally depicted as being blue collar, so that wouldn't fit with Northwestern either. I don't know. Are there a lot of elite people out there? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I thought for just a second about going over there and checking the game out. The tickets weren't that expensive, and now the euro to dollar exchange is like 1-to-1. It's like the euro's actually below $1. It was at like 99 cents the other day. Do you remember when like a couple years ago it was like a $1.50 per euro, and like people were coming over from Europe? They were traveling to the United States just to shop.
That would happen a lot. I used to work at Best Buy, and Indy used to have an F1 race. And dude, I'm telling we loved it because that week before, because like if you're coming over from Europe, like F1, nobody here cares about, but it's obviously huge in Europe. And so, and Brazil and other places, so they would be coming in here. I mean, these folks are loading up. I mean, they're buying 2 computers and cameras and extra lenses and all, like just loaded, spending thousands of dollars
free.
on
it's practically free.
Yeah, it was wild to me. And it was great because, and the funny thing was, like, if you've ever been to, I mean, any major race, but in particular, like the Indy 500 or the Brickyard or something like that, like the whole place is just flooded with trash afterwards, right? Because everybody's just whatever. But after that, like the Europeans,
not the people.
Well, like that too. Yes,
trash.
I mean it's in Speedway, Indiana, so take that for what it's worth. But I mean, like literal garbage. Right.
Okay.
Not of the human variety. There's plenty of that as well, but just, plastic cups, wrappers, things like that. But then after the F1 race, it's like the Europeans are just there's a higher degree of cleanliness there when it comes to just everything's thrown away properly. They're not tailgating and then hammered drunk at 7 a.m. on their way into the thing. It's like the overall behavior was great. So they're coming into the city, spending tons of money, leaving it clean,
keeping it clean.
Then they screwed up all the tires, and they didn't keep doing those street course races anymore. So the Firestone tire snafu kind of put the kibosh on that, unfortunately. But
yeah,
oh well.
So it's very exciting weekend coming up. So especially as a Cubs fan, it's been kind of a tough season. Although I mean, since the All-Star break, the Cubs are really actually a pretty good team. They're playing right around 600 ball. And have been playing well, even with kind of some of the plug and play guys, which we saw in this series against the Cardinals. And we'll just do a little kind of breakdown of what happened there. Monday, 1-0. The Cubs lose a game that really was just such a tight game. Good pitching on both sides. Montgomery for the Cardinals absolutely dominated. I mean, full game.
Great.
Did he even throw 90 pitches?
He might have exceeded 90 there toward
maybe
the end.
He didn't exceed 100, I don't think.
It was but I mean, he just cruised. That's what I was like. I was watching it, and that was why I made the joke. But I was like, okay, Albert Pujols hit a homer, and
that was
the Cardinals pitcher had a complete game. Like, is this like 2002? Like, what's happening here? Like,
yes,
this is you don't see any.
And that home run that Pujols hit, for God's sake,
that pitch was like a foot above the zone. That wasn't even. That wasn't even a bad pitch. Like, Smiley didn't even make a mistake. Yeah, there's no way you should have even been swinging at that. I don't know
I
how he
would
got
like
that
to
out.
see how many of pitches at that level have been hit for home runs. It had to be a foot out of the zone.
Oh, it was so high. It's his shoulders. But I mean, he's been hot, man. I mean, if he didn't have the foot issues, he probably would have had another couple of doubles in there. But
He's
instead, they were
got to
just
be
little
juiced.
singles. But
I'm sorry. I mean,
hell,
it just makes
he was
no
before.
sense.
I'd be willing to bet a whole lot that he was before. And not like Major League Baseball cares at this point. They're just going to let him ride it out. But got to get to 700, man. But that was what a weird game. And I mean, it went so fast too. And that's what I kept looking up. I'm like, wait, it can't be over. The starter's still in the game. Like, you don't ever see anybody do pitch a complete game anymore. That was what was so kind of. But it just, man, 1-0 game, just boop, 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 done.
That was it. Over and done. Cheap Pujols home run, and we're out. Tuesday, the Cubs win 2-0. Javier Assad pitched really well. 4 innings, 4 hits, 4 walks. A little control issue there, but 3 strikeouts. And then Rucker, Newcomb, Ullman, and Hughes came in. These guys, Rucker, Newcomb, Ullman, and Hughes, all guys that you could see being a part of the bullpen next year. I mean, I think Newcomb's hasn't been great, but I think Hughes has been really good, and Ullman, is it Ullman? Ullman has been good, and I think Rucker, you could see where he could be better. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, he's been kind of hit or miss. Obviously, a little bit more opportunity now than what he'd had before. I feel like there's still Hughes is a strikeout guy, not a super hard thrower, but a strikeout guy with that slider coming from the left side and all that. But and there are so many guys have got coming up through the system that are the type of like legitimate big time strikeout pitchers, high velocity, serious stuff. And that's what I'm kind of interested to see how those guys come up and how they perform, because that's still one thing. Like if you look back on it, it's an area where, Craig Kimbrell was kind of that guy, not quite. I mean, during that stretch, at least the, first half of last season was certainly that guy for the most part. I mean, Brandon Morrow was that guy for the, 2 games that he was healthy. Aroldis Chapman was that guy. They've had him at the back end, closers. But I would really love to see them be able to go out and be kind of like that. I talked about this on the Iowa Cubs broadcast the other day about being more like the Rays, to where you've got a bunch of guys who could throw out there different arm angles, different sides of the mound, being left, right, different handedness, I guess, who are all strike throwers and guys who can miss bats. And that's just something. So this staff was not built to really miss a lot of bats. They pitched to a ton of contact, and that's an area where I think they need to improve. And there are some dudes who are coming up who can do that. So I kind of feel like Ullman's been pretty good. Rucker is a guy right now, unless something changes to me, where I'm like, okay, I could see him providing a little bit of depth in that bullpen, but there's nothing exceptional about it that I look at and say right now, like, yeah, that's a dude who I could see, locking down the 6th or the 7th or whatever. But he
gives us some hard contact
too. Yeah, that's the other. That's the problem. The Cubs give up a lot of. I mean, dude, Stroman yesterday was just giving up contact all over the place after kind of wriggling out of it early. But it's there's our boy Adrian Sampson. I was going to write up one story. And it turned on a dime.
Transitioning to the second game of Tuesday was you and I had kind of gone back and forth, talking about how Sampson's hard hit rate was I think second best in all of baseball going into the game, and then he just got shelled.
Yeah,
and I mean he really got shelled. There was that 1 inning, but he gave up a couple home runs. 8 hits, 5 runs, and just kind of fell apart after being really, really good up until that game, really.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that I've kept saying. I'm beating this dead horse, but I've kept saying over and over again. That's what worried me, was that he was so far off of his previous batted ball profiles. And we I think it was on the last show because it was prior to that series that we had discussed how he has reworked his pitches. He has definitely changed his repertoire around, and so he isn't the same pitcher, but he's still not a guy who's throwing 95 to 99 and really missing bats and really, I mean, he's getting by with enough. It's in the same sense as like John Lester toward the end of his Cubs career, right? Where it became one of those deals where, okay, you've got to be really, really sharp. And if you're not, by even just a little bit, that could catch up to you. And admittedly, the Cardinals they've got some very hot hitters. They've got some dudes who can really drive the ball. And, you know, he kind of ran into a buzzsaw there, but it was very hard contact for like the first four batters, even though Goldschmidt lined out to open that fourth inning. And then it was like single, homer, double, single, or something like that, or double, homer, single. The last two of which weren't hit real hard, but that's the issue. I mean, and right now you look at it like the Cubs don't have enough of those guys. So I think Sampson could work out as a nice, again, a depth pitcher. But as I look at it, again, if you're relying on him to hold down a spot in the rotation moving forward, I don't think you have built a rotation that you intend to be competitive with.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the case at all. So I do think that the Cubs are going to be very competitive with their rotation, and there's a lot of pieces, and we've talked about those pieces. So we'll kind of see how it plays out. Wednesday, so the Cubs got just shellacked 13-3. Nothing really great came out of that game. Wednesday, actually, I'm sorry. No, I'm totally wrong. Something very great came out of that game. Franmil Reyes, dude, the guy's got some heat. He was throwing like upper 80s, like pretty easy.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He better be able to throw hard. I want to see Chris Morel up there pitching. That's what I want to see. That dude's got a hose.
We might see it. But I was very surprised to see Reyes throwing almost 90 miles an hour and no hits. I think he even had a strikeout. Yeah, he did. And so that was good. The one good thing that came out of the game was seeing Franmil Reyes, who is quickly becoming a fan favorite. He's got like 3 triples.
Yeah, which is really wild. Like, he's not a triples hitter, but he's getting them in the right angles.
Yeah, he doesn't lead the team, but he's not far off. I think the lead's like 4 or 5. His triples are pretty hard to come by. But Wednesday, 7-1, the Cubs win. Luke Farrell comes up, and we're all shaking our heads, wondering what's going on and why Caleb Kilian's not in there. Meanwhile, Farrell gets lucky, I guess, and pitches 4.14 in the third innings, 6 hits, and just 1 run, which was a home run to Nootbaar, who is turning into one of my least liked Cardinals. He's an ass. He runs around the bases, holding his hand up like number 1 and stuff, or whatever he's doing. I don't know. He's very antagonistic. Let's put it that way.
And so hopefully he seems like a creative player. Lars Nootbaar. That just sounds like a guy that got made up in a video game, you know?
It's like, and it's just a guy that would be good for the Cardinals, right? Like, right. With the name like that.
Well, he's like Jeremy Hazelbaker.
Zach McKinstry got his first home run. McKinstry, it's like he was a guy who, when he was with the Dodgers, he was kind of a high-end top prospect guy for a period of time there, and then he kind of fell a bit, and the Cubs traded Chris Martin for him. And I think the Cubs thought, maybe they'll give him some playing time and see where he's going to come out. And he feels like he could break out, but I mean, he's still batting like under the Mendoza line. I think he's like 196.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't shown very much power, just that 1 home run. He's decent in the field, I would say. He's a decent infielder. I don't think he's anything above replacement level. Maybe he slightly is, but not quite sure how he's going to fit into the Cubs' plans going into next year.
Yeah, I mean, there's some versatility there, but again, we talked about the guys coming up. I mean, they have a bunch of middle infielders, right?
Yeah.
And, does he fill kind of that depth role for another year or two while those guys are getting ready? I could see that again. It's right up there with Sampson, right? And this isn't, I don't want to demean either of them. I think they're perfectly good baseball players. Sampson's been a really good pitcher for the Cubs this year. But if that guy is depth to your roster, great. If he's an everyday type player, not so much.
And that's what the Cubs have kind of tried to do with him, and it makes sense. I mean, you've got a guy, you think maybe you can plug him in. He's versatile in the infield, like you said. So, I don't know. I think we're going to see how this plays out, but I'm not going to be surprised if he gets released in the offseason. I'm just going to say that. Maybe he doesn't get released. I don't know. Maybe he goes down. I'm sure he's still got options.
Yeah, it could happen, but that 40-man crunch is real.
Yeah, and that's where I just think. So, anyways, Thursday Stroman got shelled. I looked at Stroman's record, home versus away record. Or his ERA. Dear God, I knew he was worse at Wrigley. At home, his ERA is a 6.92 over 40 innings pitched. On the road, it's 2.08 over 56 innings pitched. He has 1.79 home runs per 9 innings at Wrigley versus 0.64 home runs per 9 on the road. I mean, every stat is just dramatically worse at Wrigley.
A couple of those are specifically against the Cardinals, though, because wasn't his worst start? Didn't he give up like 9 runs to them back in June? Wasn't that the one? I think I wrote that up for the lineup piece. I think he got crushed by them. It's like between this game and the first one, just with the Cardinals alone, I think they're tuning him up.
But it's maybe that's it. Maybe it's just that. But it's something to pay attention to. And it's funny because you've got a guy in Stroman who kind of comes out publicly and on social media and whatnot and talks about how amazing it is to play at Wrigley Field and how he loves it and all these things. And then he has an ERA that is almost 5 points worse than on the road. So I thought that was interesting. Anyways, Craig Breslow, let's talk about this, made some comments about Caleb Kilian that I found to be very interesting. And your take was kind of in the post. And it really felt like those comments. I want to read specifically what he said real quick, just a little snippet. He said, it's important that he continues to develop. It's important that he kind of understands where he is on this path. And he understands why collectively we make the decisions that we do. If that leads him here, great. And if that doesn't, that's also fine. And a statement like that to me, when I hear it, is clear. I think it'd be pretty safe to say that Kilian's been questioning why he's not being called up, or maybe why he wasn't called up earlier, or why he's back down. I think you're probably safe to make that assumption based off of those comments. Otherwise, there'd be no real reason to make those types of comments publicly. And so, do you think there is an attitude issue going on with Kilian, and that they're kind of butting heads? He's kind of butting heads with management.
I mean, maybe to an extent. I think there's a motivational aspect to stuff like this, right? To where you're kind of putting some things out publicly, maybe fanning those flames a little bit. But it is, and of course we ran with, like, Crawley reported that he had a really good source that said Kilian was starting on Tuesday and Wisniewski was going to start on Wednesday. Well, that ended up being Assad and Farrell, as you mentioned, and the Assad thing is it's interesting to the extent that both of those players had to be added to the 40-man. Kilian's already on the 40-man. And I think with Farrell in particular, you talk about a 30 or 31-year-old journeyman who, has like a career 5 ERA-ish, Farrell's a guy who I think the Cubs are going to try to integrate into their pitching infrastructure at some point in the future. Very, very intelligent. Northwestern, speaking of Northwestern grad, self-taught pianist and guitar player, right? Just very smart about these things. But when that dude's getting called up over you, I could understand how he might be a little salty about it. And Kilian was in line. He was on regular rest. So but I think part of that is like he hasn't performed very well at the major league level either. So it's kind of like, all right, go out here and prove it, like dominate at AAA. Don't just be good, dominate.
Yeah, and he hasn't really done that at all at AAA. He was very good there for a period of time, but yeah, those comments are pretty concerning to me because I think when you start to see a guy, I don't know, I just think that like in order to really make it at the major league level and to really get out of the minor league level, right? You got to have a good attitude. I mean, use Chris Morel as an example, right? I mean, here's a guy who's just going with whatever they throw at him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He made the most of his opportunity. He came up and he played really well. Now, had he played poorly, I mean, I'm sure he's a guy who still would have had a good attitude. And when you're going back and forth and you're kind of just on that fringe of trying to become that major league player, but you're not quite there yet, and you got to bounce back and forth. And we've seen a lot of that. I mean, Kyle Schwarber, Ian Happ, I mean, these guys, you've got to be able to mentally handle it and to not be that guy who's sitting there trying to say, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And I think when you become the guy who says, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about, a lot of times that guy just ends up going away. And I'm afraid that's going to happen with Kilian.
Yeah, that can happen. Although I think there's part of it to where I want a guy to have the kind of fire and to be willing. And my hope is that they're pushing him a little bit, that Breslow's able to lean on him a little bit and to get that guy to then, metaphorically speaking, flip the bird to the front office and force them to put him right like that. And there's a difference, right? Again, we're going to put pressure on you. We're not calling you up. We're going to make you earn it.
Yeah.
And one side is to be bitter about it. And the other is, all right, I'll show you, I'll prove to you that I need to be at this next level and then get there.
But that's something that like, it has to be done. So like, obviously Kilian can't do it on his own, right? Like, I mean, if he was going to shove at the AAA level, he would have been doing that already, right? And so I think you mentioned in the piece that perhaps this is more relative to some changes that they want Kilian to address or to make in who knows what in his delivery or whatever, that perhaps he's fighting.
No, I don't think he's fighting. I don't think that's the case. I think it's simply that he prior to this year, really even last year, it wasn't until the Arizona Fall League that his stuff really started to tick up. So he was normally a guy who was used to sitting, around 93, 94 with his fastball. Now he's sitting comfortably at like 96, even 97, touching 98, 99. And, he's added that curveball. I think there's something to that, right? Of learning how to then, because it's a lot easier to be a control pitcher if you're 92 to 94, and he had been. But now all of a sudden, and we've seen it. We've seen him uncork some pretty bad pitches from time to time, and I think some of that is a function of getting used to that stuff. So he's been working with the staff to correct those. But I think what happens is your repertoire changes, your ability to throw certain pitches and certain velocities changes, but you're still in the same body, right? You've got to learn how to. It's a different. You're dealing with it with your kid. I got a 13-year-old who's now, he put his shoes on the other day. He's as tall as my wife, who's 5'9". Maybe he's like an eighth of an inch shorter, but so he's grown several inches over the last year or whatever. And so he's literally in a new body. So we're having to like rework how he throws and moves. And so at that, Kilian's not growing anymore, but his stuff has changed. And so he's got to learn what was comfortable and what was right and normal and natural a year ago no longer is. And I think that's something he's got to fully accept and embrace. And, and I think there was some hype to that too. He got a ton of helium out of the Arizona Fall League. And I think there's,
of course,
there's maybe,
well, I mean, he pitched in the championship game, so that was a little bit more,
and it was like perfect
exposure
through 6 innings. And I think they want to take him down a peg, I think, and if he's a feisty type of a dude who can really get after it, then I think he'll be able to handle this. I hope he will. But they've also they've signed and traded for and drafted a whole ton of pitchers over the last year in addition to him. And so I think that's part of it too, is like, hey dude, you're not on an island, baby. You know what I mean?
Dead
Like,
man walking.
Wisniewski's coming right up behind you. So, get your shit together. Let's go.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. This just kind of feels like a last ditch effort by the Cubs. Like, you don't call out somebody like this, especially a guy who has, is in the minors, is not a major league player. I understand this at a major league level. If you've got a guy who's got an attitude, and this type of stuff happens a lot actually at the major league level. But for a guy to call out a minor leaguer, you just don't see that as much.
Yeah. But I think part of that, though, I think we want to be careful about it, too. It's not like Breslow called a press conference and then just decided to blast Kilian, right? I think it was the situation, and reporters are asking him, hey, what's up with Kilian? Like, why is, what's going on there? Will we see him this weekend? Why was it Assad? That sort of thing. So I think it was, I wouldn't ascribe too much weight to it. I think this is, so often when we hear a statement from someone, we need to come back and say, well, it's not as if he went out there and voluntarily offered this. It was like, hey, guys, come here. I got to tell you about Kilian. He's up there, and Patrick Mooney's like, or Sahadev or Gordon Whitmire or somebody, right? Like, why didn't Kilian?
But he knows he's going to be asked these questions, right? I mean,
right.
This is something he should be prepared to answer.
Oh, yeah. And I think he probably could have. And again, the whole, if he makes it up, he doesn't. That was not saying if he never makes it back, that's okay. That was like if he's not called up in September. That's if he's not back up on the major league roster this season. That's not a make or break thing, right? Like he could still be the number 2 starter in the rotation next year. I don't think that'll be the case. I mean, he could be in the rotation though. So Breslow was not saying definitively as a prospect if he makes it good, if he doesn't make it, whatever. He was just, if he doesn't come up again this year, that's not the end of the world. That's all it was. So I think that's the context matters.
Yeah, I think Caleb Kilian would disagree with that statement, but it kind of is what it is. Hopefully that's kind of the point, but we'll see. So the Cubs will take on the Milwaukee Brewers, a team that they kind of knocked down a peg or two last week, or at the beginning of the week. Was it last weekend? I guess by taking 2 out of 3. Of course, that was at Wrigley. And they are now going to play 3 games against the Brewers up in Milwaukee. And if anything, wouldn't it be just lovely if the Cubs could go in and take another 2 out of 3 against the Brewers, who are
they're reeling a little bit.
Let me look at the standings. Yeah, how have they been doing the last? I don't know who they just played. I try not to pay attention to them. Oh, they're 6 games back. Oh, they're out of the wild card. Oh, this is delightful. So the Cubs can actually go in. There's an outside, like a seriously outside shot that the Cubs could overtake Milwaukee for second.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great.
Like,
it's 12 games back.
Be damned. It would just be great to have to. Oh God!
If Milwaukee just falls apart, and they're real close, they're only 7 games over 500.
What's going to happen?
They've lost 2,
right? They've got jack shit. Like Christian Yelich is a dead man walking. Who do they have from an offensive standpoint? They've been reliant on their pitching now.
Yeah.
And eventually that's going to fade, or they're going to have to re-sign those guys. They're going to have to end up moving them. We saw what happened with Hader, right? Like if you get like, oh man, if one of their top pitchers gets injured, God forbid, I don't want to wish injury upon anybody, but they're done. Like it is. Oh man. It's just, there's things you hate to see. And then there's what's going on in Milwaukee. And boy, you love to see it.
You do love to see it. And so wouldn't it be great if the Cubs could go up there and take at least 2 out of 3 from them this weekend? That would be just delightful. And you've got Justin Steele, who has just been, I mean, he's like pitching like an elite pitcher right now, going against Freddie Peralta, who I think the Cubs beat. Wasn't that the same matchup? Didn't Steele go against Peralta last week?
Did he? Maybe. Yes. Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe.
But I think the Cubs beat Peralta last week. Let me think. I've got my notes here. Steele went on Sunday, but I don't have who went against him, but I know Peralta gave up some runs in whatever game he threw against the Cubs. And actually, Steele has a better ERA, is 3.25 ERA versus Peralta's 4.08 ERA. So getting off to a good start and winning the game tonight sure would be a nice way to get things started. And then Drew Smiley, who's been very, very good, goes against Woodruff. Can you believe that Smiley's ERA of 3.47 is better than Woodruff's of 3.51? Who would have guessed that?
But that's the thing. Is like, again, Woodruff and Peralta were having like all-time great seasons, career best seasons, previously, and they had those two in Burns. Well, one of those is clearly better than the other two, but at one point, like 2 out of the 3 of them were pitching like Cy Young caliber, finalists or whatever for a while. That doesn't keep happening. But yeah, man, Smiley just keeps on keeping on.
He really does, man. I'm telling you, it's just interesting to see. And the Cubs have him on a 1-year deal?
Yeah. Is there an option with his? I can't remember.
I'm mixing it up. Sure, would be nice if there was. And then Sampson goes against Lauer on Sunday. So, I mean, this really feels like a series the Cubs can and I want to say should win.
I'm saying they take 2 or 3. I think they win the series.
I'm with you on that. And I mean, if they do, listen, we were looking at this stretch that the Cubs were on thinking, oh my God, this is, they were playing really good and they had won like 5 straight series, including the Brewers. Granted they lost to St. Louis, but St. Louis was the hottest team in baseball coming into Chicago. You know what I mean? They had won, I don't know how many games straight, but they were playing very well. And the Cubs played them really well. I mean, they let, a couple games get away from them. Goldschmidt went off on Thursday. There's nothing you can do about that. He's probably the best player in all of baseball right now. And then the 13-3 game was just, it was what it was. Just got away from them. But the other games, I mean, they won 2, and the Monday game they easily could have won. They lost it 1-0. And so I thought that was a really, really good series by the Cubs against a very good team in the St. Louis Cardinals. And so you're looking ahead and you're like, you're not really feeling all that bad going into this stretch. You've got Toronto coming up after, and there's I saw a comment by Jed Hoyer saying there are going to be, I think, 2 or 3 Cubs players who are not going to be able to play in Toronto. I don't think he identified them, did he?
No, I don't think he can't.
Yeah,
HIPAA until they put him on the restricted list.
We'll all find out.
Yeah,
we will find out
soon enough.
Very soon who's on that list. So that'll be interesting. But when we start looking at the Cubs as they move forward after what we thought was going to be a really hard stretch, and the Cubs right now, 8 games into the stretch are 4-4. Pretty good. And then whatever happens with Milwaukee and Toronto, trying to pull up the schedule here. My internet's like super slow. Let's see if I can click September. And then we've got 3 against the Cardinals to start September, but then it gets markedly easier where you've got, a home stretch against the Reds and the Giants, and then at New York, 3 against the Rockies, the Marlins, Pirates, and the Phillies, and then you close out the year with the Reds. So, I mean, the Cubs could really go on a run in September. I know it's weird to say that, but and that's the thing that we had talked about, and I think that's kind of out there right now. And I think Nico Horner was the first person to really say something about it. Was, hey, listen, we need to continue to play well here. We're not playing for a playoff spot, but we're playing because we have pride in what we do, and we're also playing because, listen, if anybody wants to come and play for us, they need to see that we have a good team and that we can win. Mm-hmm. And I think the Cubs are doing a really good job of showing that. I don't think they're worried about where they are in the draft next year at all. I don't think it matters anymore. I think they're moving on from that mentality, and it would be great to see them get rid of Kervin Castro. Dead tired of seeing that guy pitch, but yeah, and there's some other guys that could, it would be nice to see them come up. But so hopefully, things kind of come together here. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So anyways, I think we got to go. So everyone have a great weekend. We'll circle back probably on Monday or something like that.
Yeah,
but
sounds good.
Until then, take your
See ya.
easy, as they say.